Yeah. Hair flip. Yeah, I'm a badass bitch. I don't like it. Hair flip. Yeah. Oh my god. So you guys should be happy. Oh my goodness. Hair flip. But anyways, hair flip. And hair flipping on these hoes. Hi.
Mate, oh, I'm so sorry. I thought there was time.
He's just pulled out. I don't have time to stop.
Oh, come on, mate. It was a simple mistake.
I know if I was going a bit slower.
Please. I've got my boy in the back.
I'm going too fast. I'm sorry.
Venus Williams. Tennis star Venus Williams got into a car accident in June 2017, which left one man dead. Williams was driving in Palm Beach Garden, Florida, when she rushed into an intersection despite not having the right of way. She was T-boned by the car. The driver survived, but her husband, 78-year-old man, was sent to the ICU. He died 2 weeks later.
Well, there is trouble for one of the biggest names in modern tennis, a deadly crash involving Venus Williams, and police say that she is at fault. Maggie Rowley looks at the crash and why Williams is to blame.
Police in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida stress that it was an accident, but still fault Venus Williams for a car crash that killed 78-year-old Jerome Barson and seriously injured his wife, Linda.
She is devastated. This is the man she loved. She's been married for 35 years. And she is absolutely devastated.
Very heartfelt words about the accident. Is there anything else that you just would want to say about that?
There are really no words to describe like how devastating and yeah, I'm completely speechless, and it's just I'm just
Before we take any further questions for Venus, please be aware she's unable to say anything more about this. So I'd ask you to respect her wishes, please.
Caitlyn Jenner. Olympic champion and reality star Caitlyn Jenner was involved in a fatal car accident on the Malibu stretch of PCH in February 2015. According to eyewitnesses, Jenner's SUV rear-ended a white car and sent it careening into oncoming traffic. It was struck by a Hummer. The driver of the white car was killed and 7 others sustained injuries. Jenner was not hurt in the wreck. Police say that Jenner voluntarily submitted that her blood drawn for a blood alcohol test, that she was not speeding at the time. After passing a field sobriety test, she initially claimed that she was being chased by the paparazzi, but police do not believe that to be true. Jenner later released a statement saying, "My heartfelt and deepest sympathies go out to the family and loved ones, and to all those who were involved or injured in this terrible accident. It is devastating and a tragedy, and I cannot pretend to imagine what the family is going through at this time. I am praying for them. I will continue to cooperate in every possible way."
The difference between manslaughter and murder is intent. That a murder is intentional killing of another person. Manslaughter is the unintentional killing. Involuntary manslaughter is actually kind of a redundant phrase because manslaughter is always involuntary.
She took a sobriety test at the scene of the incident, passed, no problem there. How does that factor into all of this?
Well, that's one of the factors. You know, manslaughter can be charged as a felony or a misdemeanor. Apparently, only misdemeanor is under consideration here, which you can understand if there is no issue of drunk driving. There's no issue of going over the speed limit. You can still behave in a reckless way without being drunk or without going over the speed limit. You can change lanes in a reckless way, but that leads to usually lesser charges than, say, a drunk driving homicide.
And the fact that she was driving under the posted speed limit, but above what was regarded as an unsafe speed for the road conditions at the time, how does that play into this?
Well, that is one of the factors that is almost certainly leading the misdemeanor rather than a felony to be under consideration. The fact that this was not apparently an outrageously bad piece of driving by Caitlyn Jenner, but something that could be criminal, but in a misdemeanor. And remember, misdemeanors in the United States, almost no one ever goes to prison for a misdemeanor, even though technically a year is possible. And no one almost ever goes to trial on misdemeanors.
So you don't expect some highly explosive, well-publicized trial?
There are almost no misdemeanor trials in these sorts.
Don King. Boxing promoter Don King killed 2 men in 2 separate incidents. King killed a man in self-defense when he was trying to break into his gambling operation. King was convicted of second-degree murder for the second incident, in which he stomped a man to death who was an employee that owed him $600. Don King has helped promote some of the biggest fights of all time that feature some of the most famous and accomplished boxers in history, including the likes of Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, George Foreman, Evander Holyfield, and Roy Jones Jr. However, his career as a promoter was certainly lucrative, was marred by controversy as he was accused and sued by many fighters for stealing money, which brought numerous lawsuits and a vast majority of which were settled out of court. King, who is now close to 90 years old, has been charged with tax evasion on numerous occasions, but was never convicted. But before Don King ever promoted his first boxing match and became the celebrity he became, he killed not 1, but 2 men in separate incidents. But less than 4 years in prison was the time he spent. Don King controlled one of the biggest number rackets in Cleveland, and in 1954, he shot and killed a man named Hillary Brown, who was said to be trying to rob one of King's gambling houses. When the case went to court, Don King claimed that he killed Brown in self-defense, an argument that the court agreed with, and he walked away free on justifiable homicide. On April 20th, 1966, Don King, still in the numbers game, got into an altercation with one of his employees, a 34-year-old man named Sam Garrett, near the intersection of Cedar Avenue and 100th Street in Cleveland. King claimed that Garrett owed him $900, while Garrett said that he only owed his boss $600. The two fought in the street, and although exact details of the fight vary, some witnesses said they saw King kick Garrett in the head at least 3 times and also struck him with a .38 caliber revolver before being pulled off of him by 2 Cleveland detectives. Garrett died in the hospital 5 days later. During the trial in 1967, Don King once claimed self-defense, as said Garrett followed him out of the bar and threatened his life over the pay amount. He said that he got out of his car and returned the kicks from Garrett, but that he never stomped on Garrett's face and never hit him with the revolver, which was in his right hand. King said he only used his left hand to punch. The 2 detectives testified that they did witness King kicking Garrett in the head. After just 4 hours of deliberation, a jury of 8 women and 4 men convicted Don King of second-degree murder, a verdict that brought with a possible sentence of life imprisonment. However, the charge was later reduced to voluntary manslaughter, and King spent just 3 years and 11 months in a Marion Correctional Institution.
Natural phenomenon. He's been on the cover of just about every national magazine. He's been invited to the White House by the last 3 presidents. My purpose was to try to get beneath the electrified hair and mesmerizing personality. But after I asked Don King my first question, he exploded in anger.
But for a scumbag like you, Jack Newfield, that is prejudice. You don't have no right to do what you do. You're not fair, impartial, and objective. do your thing.
I was taken aback by the intensity of his rage and by his attempt to intimidate me.
You ain't got nothing in you that spells truth. You're the biggest prevaricator, lying SOB that ever was, man. You are nothing. You are nothing.
The public may see Don King as a benign rogue, but his roots go back to a violent past in blue-collar Cleveland, Ohio, where intimidation was a way of life.
Excellent. And we're coming right up to the spot where, yes, sir, maybe 30 feet ahead, somewhere in there, right about in that area.
I returned to King's old neighborhood with Bob Tunney, a former Cleveland police officer. Tunney was an eyewitness when King, a numbers racketeer, stomped a man to death in 1966.
We were driving west on Cedar, and I saw a few hundred feet ahead, a man lying on the sidewalk, a man standing over him, kicking him in the head. We drove up there, immediately stopped the car, and I jumped out of the vehicle, and the man standing up had a revolver in his hand. So I pulled out my gun. I says, drop the gun. He took the gun, threw it on the back trunk of another vehicle that was parked there. I went over immediately and grabbed that gun, and as I did, this gentleman standing up just went over to the man lying down and gave him one vicious kick again right in the head.
Police officers rushed to aid the victim. One of them took this photograph. Detective Tunney is shown leaning over the man, Sam Garrett. Garrett weighed 100 pounds less than King, and he owed King $600.
And he kept saying to me, Donald, I'll pay you, I'll pay you, I'll pay you. He repeated it a couple times, and after that he just lapsed in unconsciousness.
Donald King was well known to the Cleveland Police Department. His rap sheet shows that he was arrested more than 30 times between 1951 and 1966 on charges ranging from gambling to assault. In 1954, King killed a man in a shootout. It was a case of self-defense. A high school graduate with a quick mind for mathematics, King had been working in the illegal numbers business since age 18. In the early 1960s, he was the biggest numbers boss in Cleveland and was grossing $15,000 a day. A previously undisclosed FBI document reports that King was kicking back a portion of his profits to the Cleveland Mafia in return for protection of his numbers operation. I also learned new information about the Sam Garrett murder case. Detective Tunney told me he was offered what he believes was a bribe.
Probably the fall of '66, I got approached by an attorney. He says, you know, Tunney, Donald can do a lot for you. And I knew what he meant right away, and I said, well, forget it.
Police reports allege that King spent $30,000 to buy off witnesses to the killing. It seemed to work. None showed up to testify at the trial. But based on the eyewitness account of Detective Tunney, a jury convicted Don King of second-degree murder after just 4 hours of deliberation. Then, in a highly unusual move, the judge met with King and his lawyer and reduced the jury's murder verdict down to manslaughter. Nobody from the prosecutor's office was present at the meeting. Carl DeLau was Tunney's boss in a homicide unit. He suspects the case was fixed.
Definitely. Why would that reduction of penalty from second-degree murder to manslaughter take place on a Saturday morning without the proper authorities being notified? Something was very radically wrong, and it was a miscarriage of justice. There's no question about it.
I got in a fist fight, and what I call frustrations of the ghetto were expressing themselves. When you're dealing with
King served 4 years and got out of prison in 1971. He later gave his version of the homicide to a British reporter.
How did you kill a man in a fist fight?
Well, we was fighting one another, and we was kicking one another, and his head hit the concrete, and it must have been a pretty bad blow, which I've suffered deep contrition for since it happened. But nevertheless, I was instrumental in the fatality of a fellow human being, whom happened to be one of my personal friends. Unfortunately for me, they found out that I was Don King, the guy that was running the numbers. Now the sensationalism came into play. Don King, the numbers baron, the numbers czar, the numbers kingpin. So they began to try me for numbers rather than for an accidental death and the fatality of a fellow human being.
Snoop Dogg. Rapper Snoop Dogg and his bodyguard were charged with the murder of a rival gang member. Snoop Dogg was defended by Johnny Cochran and was acquitted after years of court battles. After having a heated prior run-in with rival gang members one August afternoon outside his apartment, Snoop Dogg found himself back in their presence hours after their first encounter. The gangbangers from the outside apartment, out in the open in plain sight, sitting at the picnic table in the Palms Park right by their tent, Jake details setting the scene for the impending crime. Snoop didn't think he had accelerated, rolled up on them, stopped the Jeep. The gangbangers looked up from the sweaty Mexican food they were eating. One of them, Little Smooth, aka Philip Wonderman, stood up. Snoop and Malik had looks on their faces that said the same thing. What the fuck? Phillips broke out. I'm not trying to sweat you all. I'm just trying to let you know where you're at. Jake explains of the incident. Malik stood up in the topless Jeep, towering over the Cherokee's window shield and staring at the menace at Philip. Philip grew agitated and shouted out, "Oh, what? I'm a punk now?" Malik hit back with a stern, "What?" Philip's friend, Jason London, who was at the scene, later testified that that's when Malik pulled out his pistol and aimed it at Philip. What happened next would go on to become the basis of Snoop's 1995 trial. Philip then, according to Malik anyway, reached back for his .380 tucked in his waistband. Malik caught the move, Snoop ducked, Malik fired from the Jeep, and Philip fell to the ground before he was able to draw on Snoop and his crew. Jake shares, Snoop banged on the accelerator and got the hell out of there. He, Malik, and Sean went into hiding. Philip went into the afterlife, died on the scene, face down in the streets. Snoop gave himself up a couple days later, but only after the music video awards. Of course, he didn't end up going to trial until 1995. The murder was indeed the case that they gave him, he continues, but a racially diverse jury could not convict him of that charge. And there was a great deal of debate around Snoop and Malik's claims of self-defense, specifically that Philip had a gun and was threatening to kill them. After some time after trial, it was eventually discovered that Philip's friend, who was also at the scene, hid the gun, Jason London. Another one of Philip's friends, who was there for the entire incident at the Palms Park, testified that yes, Philip was strapped and yes, his gun had been removed from the scene and hidden to protect him, Jake says.
This trial is over. He's finally able to speak his mind about the feelings and emotions he had during this long case.
Make sure y'all get my death row symbol. Symbolization of greatness. Yeah, pull yours out, DK. I couldn't wear it through court. I had to keep it up under my tie. Now court is over.
We, the jury in above entitled action, find the defendant, Calvin Brodus, not guilty of the crime of murder in the first degree.
I'm curious, what was going through your mind at the time that the jury was reading the verdict?
I left it in God's hand, Abby. That's why I looked so stone-faced. I didn't have no expressions, you know what I'm saying? It was all inner. I prayed on it. My family prayed on it. David Kenner, you know what I'm saying, put on the bomb case. Donna Ray, Marsha Morrissey, Paul Palladino, the whole dream team. They did what they were supposed to do when they gave the baton to the jury, and I couldn't do nothing but just bank on them and worry about what the outcome was going to be, as far as to just sit there and hold my position and keep my head up high and just, you know, wait for the outcome.
Right. When you talk about the dream team, it's interesting because obviously after OJ, you know, the price of having a team like that is certainly not what the average person and certainly not what the average Black American male can afford. Do you feel that there is a price on justice? Would you have gotten the same type of you know, defense team if you were not in the rap game like you are, making money like you are now?
I mean, only if David Kenner just would have had love for me on that level and just did it for me, just not for the paper, but just doing it for the love, because I know that's how he is about me. He's not concerned with the money issue, and you know what I'm saying, and I knew that when he did his closing argument, you know what I'm saying, because it brought him to tears, it brought me to tears, and a couple of jurors to tears, because he was actually telling them I'm not representing Snoop Doggy Dogg for Snoop Doggy Dogg. I'm representing him because I love him as an individual. I knew him before this incident. I know him after this incident. And I'm giving y'all control of his life, in which I've had control over for the past 2.5 years. And I love this man. If you take him away, it's like you taking me away.
Duane "Dog" Chapman. In 1976, Jerry Oliver was shot to death by one of Dog the Bounty Hunter's friends when they went to buy marijuana from him. Though Dog was outside waiting in the car at the time, he was still convicted of first-degree murder. He served 18 months of a 5-year sentence. Johnny Lewis. In 2012, Sons of Anarchy actor Johnny Lewis broke into a home of an 81-year-old Catherine David, ransacked her home, and then killed her and her cat. He jumped or fell from a roof and died. Lewis had been born into a Scientologist family and worked for the church's drug rehab group called Narconon. Sons of Anarchy actor Johnny Lewis fell to his death from a building in Los Angeles. Moments after, he allegedly beat his landlady, an 81-year-old woman, to death, authorities say. Lewis, 28, who played Kip Halfsack Epps on the FX show and once dated Katy Perry, was found lying in a driveway in Los Feliz neighborhood near Hollywood on Wednesday, while a woman identified as Catherine Davis was found dead of apparently blunt force trauma inside the building. The upstairs part of the building had been ransacked. Police also found the body of a cat that had apparently been beaten. It's a terrible tragedy as far as we're concerned, and we're digging into the bottom of it, LAPD spokesman Andrew Smith tells People. Lewis had been released from jail just days before. The actor pleaded no contest August 8th to assault with a deadly weapon, and then on August 17th, he pleaded no contest to burglary, according to court records. He was sentenced to a year in jail, the first case, and 291 days in the second, but given hundreds of days of credit for the jail time already served in good behavior. He left a San Fernando Valley jail at 4:05 p.m. on September 21st. 5 days later, official officers responding to a 911 call of a woman screaming and was told that Lewis had fought with 2 men, and it wasn't clear if this was before or after the landlady was killed, and that Lewis died after a fall, possibly from a wall or balcony, according to police. Charles S. Dutton. At just 17 years old, Charles Dutton got into a fight with another man and ended up killing him. He was convicted of manslaughter and would spend the next 7 years in prison. Michael Brea. Brea is a bit actor, but his crime is pretty heinous. In 2010, he allegedly decapitated his mother with a samurai sword while screaming Bible verses. If that's not dark, I don't know what is.
Say an aspiring actor who once appeared on the show Ugly Betty is undergoing a psychological evaluation following a brutal attack on his mother. 31-year-old Michael Brea is shown here on his Facebook page. Authorities say officers were responding to a 911 call early Tuesday morning when they found Brea with a large sword inside a blood-splattered bedroom.
It's not someone that you can look and say, well, it's a monster walking the road, or someone who's going to flip any time. It's not like that.
His mother, 55-year-old Yannick Brea, was kneeling in the bathroom with substantial cuts to her head. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Family members and neighbors say they're struggling to understand what went wrong.
Shock is an understatement for something like this, an understatement. Out of character. It even seemed like an out-of-body experience.
One neighbor told WABC that before the police arrived, he heard the victim let out a horrific scream, and he says it sounded like her son was chanting.
Like Jerusalem, Jesus, Aaron. Then the last line I caught from him was the greatest architect of the universe.
Police say there was no previous domestic violence incidents at the home, and Michael Brea had no previous arrests. Authorities weren't sure at the time if the actor had a psychiatric history. Ross Simpson, The Associated Press.
Michael Jace. An actor on the hit show The Shield, Michael Jace murdered his wife in 2014 over what is believed to be domestic violence. To make it even worse, his 2 children were in the house of the time of the shooting.
Well, Shield actor Michael Jace was sentenced today in downtown Los Angeles. A judge gave him 40 years to life in prison for killing his wife. CBS 2's Amber Lee has details.
It was an emotional day for the family of April Jace as they sat in the courtroom behind her killer. Former actor Michael Jace was sentenced to 40 years to life behind bars after a jury found him guilty of second-degree murder, more than 2 years after he gunned down his wife. Before the sentence was handed down, the victim's mother read a statement. In a shaky voice, she told the court she still cries for her daughter and deeply misses her.
I cry on holidays and I cry on her birthday. I cry on May 19th. My only daughter was shot and killed on May 19th, 2014, but we both died that night.
In May 2014, Jace shot and killed his wife in front of their 2 young sons, ages 8 and 5 at the time, inside their home in Los Angeles. The prosecutor told jurors Jace was upset that his wife wanted a divorce.
My mind often wanders to the future, and I think about how my grandsons will navigate their teen years. At what point in a friendship will they bring up the fact that their father killed their mother?
The judge allowed the 53-year-old to say a few words before handing down his sentence. Jace apologized to his wife's family, but also insisted that he didn't mean to kill her.
No justification for my actions that night at all. I'm profoundly sorry for the pain that I caused everyone.
During the middle of Jace's statement, the victim's mother and other family members abruptly walked out of the courtroom, showing no interest in what the former actor had to.
Michael Massey. Massey is the man who infamously killed Brandon Lee, the son of the legendary Bruce Lee, while filming The Crow. A prop gun on the set was improperly prepared for the scene. A real bullet was actually fired and it killed Brandon Lee. On March 30th, 1993, Brandon Lee, the son of Bruce Lee, showed up on set of his movie, The Crow, not knowing that within 24 hours, he would be dead. Earlier in the shoot, a prop guy went down to their local prop shop to buy items for the production, during which he also purchased a set of live bullets, which he took back to the set of The Crow. As live rounds should never be kept on a film set, the film's prop master removed them and stored them in the trunk of his own car. As live bullets are never used in films, guns are loaded with blanks, which are bullet casings filled with primer, a form of gunpowder that creates the firing effect. Unlike a real bullet, however, blanks have a cardboard tip on the end rather than a lead one, so that any impact the bullet would have fired from the gun would be minimal, if any at all. During a scene in which a victim looks down a barrel of a gun being loaded, it was discovered that there were no blanks on set. In effort to save time, the prop guys took the live bullets from the car and modified them into blanks, also creating dummy rounds, which didn't have gunpowder but kept the lead tip, to be used for close-ups. Unbeknownst to anyone on set, when the dummy rounds would be loaded into the gun for that shot, the lead tip got lodged in the barrel. 2 weeks later, on March 30th, that same gun was used for the scene where Brandon Lee was shot by Michael Massey, character Funboy. The scene called for Lee to walk into his apartment and then activate the squib, a packet of blood that would simulate the gunshot wound. Once Massey fired the gun and fall to the ground, everything went as planned. Then the gun went off, the squib went off, and Lee fell down. It wasn't until the Poyas called cut that everyone realized Lee wasn't moving. In fact, he wasn't losing a ton of blood from the silver dime-sized bullet wound. Unfortunately, the gun with the blank was fired. It also propelled the lead tip that was lodged there between 2 weeks earlier, hitting Lee in his abdomen right above his navel. Lee was rushed to the New Hanover Regional Medical Center and operated on for 6 hours before being pronounced dead at 1:04 a.m. on March 31st, 1993. A 2-month investigation followed, and the shooting was ruled an accident, so no criminal charges were filed. Lee's mother, Linda Caldwell, did file a civil suit against the studio, which was settled out of court. 2 months following Lee's death, Pressman secured a further $8 million to rewrite the script and finish the production of The Crow, using the stuntman Chad and Jeff to fill in the remaining shots of Eric driving in Lee's face imposed over their own in the post-production for close-ups. There was never a question about technical ability to finish the movie, Pressman says, but there was a serious question psychologically, and it really revolved around Pryor's. See Murder. This article is dated 9/19/2003, so it's an older article, but it's definitely all the information we need to know on See Murder. A teen killed in a nightclub shooting was a devoted fan of the rapper charged in his slang, according to the prosecutor in the murder trial of See Murder, whose real name is Corey Miller. A teen killed in a nightclub shooting was a devoted fan of the rapper charged in his slang. According to the prosecutor in the murder trial of See Murder, the younger brother of rap star Master P, Miller is charged with second-degree murder and faces a mandatory life sentence if he is convicted of the death of a 16-year-old boy named Steve Thomas. As Miller's murder trial began Wednesday in Gretna, LA, prosecutor Douglas Freeze says Thomas had dreams of being a rap star and had posters of See Murder, the defendant, on the walls of his bedroom. The trial is expected to last about 3 weeks. Master P, whose real name is Percy Miller, did not attend the first day of the proceedings. Miller, 30 at the time, has acknowledged being in Club Platinum in a suburban New Orleans that night on January in 2002, but has denied shooting Thomas. In his opening statement, Freeze says the shooting followed an argument on the nightclub dance floor. He said Miller and about 5 friends were beating the tar out of Thomas when Miller pulled a gun and shot him in the chest. Freeze says witnesses will testify that he saw Miller shoot the victim. Miller's lawyer, Ronald, said instigators never found the weapon and had no evidence tying Miller to the slang. The only witness to the actual shooting has lied to police and never actually saw a gun in Miller's hand, his lawyer states. There were roughly 300 people inside of the shooting when it occurred. Police have said Thomas used a fake ID to get in the now closed club. Miller has a history of trouble with the police and faces numerous charges besides the second-degree murder count. He was on bail when the Club Platinum shooting occurred, facing an attempted first-degree murder charge of allegedly trying to shoot a Baton Rouge nightclub owner. So when paying attention to this clip is the clip of them speaking of the first nightclub shooting before See Murder allegedly killed the 16-year-old boy in the next nightclub that happened later on. So you can see that he tried to pull a gun. He did. and he tried to shoot the gun multiple times, but it malfunctioned. So multiple people could have been hurt in this process, in this melee. Thank God that gun jammed, because there could have been multiple people shot here. So sorry, C. Murder, you are not innocent in this situation here. You were clearly here shooting, and once again at black people. Why is that not a big deal? That it's okay for these rappers, especially back then, to just go around killing black people as if that's something to brag about. But once again, pay attention to this clip and you can see that C. Murder did pull the gun and try to shoot the nightclub owner, and not only him, also the bodyguard, which the people that were there could have also been shot and hurt in the process. So once again, you are not innocent, C. Murder, aka Corey Miller. Police said a fight occurred when the man wanted to check Miller for weapons. The rapper allegedly tried to fire his gun, but it malfunctioned. Miller's lyrics and nickname played a central part of the jury selection. When defense lawyers quizzing potential jurors on their views about rap and whether they could be impartial toward a murder suspect whose nickname is C. Murder, one man was dismissed after he described rap as just about drugs and shooting the cops. Miller's father, Percy Miller Sr., said Monday that his son is innocent. This is a lot of stress on the family, but we know that he didn't do it, he told the Associated Press outside the courtroom. He said people should ignore C. Murder's image, a gangster who boasts about his life of crime and violence. He's a rapper, the father said. That's just a character he's playing.
Mississippi River, in the jail cell that has been his home for nearly 3 years, Corey Miller sits waiting on a retrial for the murder of a 16-year-old boy in a nightclub shooting.
This is Jefferson Parish Correctional Center. You know, they got me for a second-degree murder, something I didn't do.
To many, Corey is not behind bars because he's a killer, but because he is the well-known rapper C. Murder, infamous for his stark rhymes of violence and killing.
But you better play it hard. Chill on in your car. My temper hot like talk on the block. Hold it up with them things loaded up. And if them people pull up and tell my boy to free, buckle up, knuckle up, screaming CP3.
This man was demonized from literally the day he was arrested. The chief law enforcement officer of Jefferson Parish makes a statement to the police that this is a man who's living his name, C. Murder. He's living his lyrics.
But prosecutors say the stage name fits like a bloody glove. He's a killer. The verdict in the new trial will hinge on the jury's perception of who sits before them, Corey Miller, artist, or C. Murder, homicidal thug.
To have my name used against me since I've been arrested, you know, it hurt, you heard me? It's because it's like, I'm guilty for I'm innocent.
New Orleans and Miami are just two battlegrounds in what has become a war of values.
Race does play a factor in a lot of these cases. You have prejudice in every department because people see these guys making a lot of money, driving a Mercedes-Benz that they could work 20 years and never get.
To some, the conflict is as much a class struggle as a racial one.
Hip-hop spits truth to power, and very often those in law enforcement represent a protective force for those who are in power.
Police would be focusing on hip-hop like never before. One of the first to react in 2001, 7 years after Tupac Shakur's conviction on sexual assault charges, another thug rapper found himself in trouble with the law. After nearly 3 years in Jefferson Parish Correctional Center, Corey Miller remains behind bars on charges of second-degree murder and the killing of a 16-year-old boy.
This is happening to me because, first of all, I'm C. Murder.
And in New Orleans, that means many things to different people. The brother of rap superstar and mogul Master P, Miller carved his own niche in hip-hop.
With this whole free C. Murder thing, I've never been on that bandwagon and I'm never going to get on it. If you can stand in front of that little black 16-year-old's family and tell them to free C. Murder because you feel that he should be free because he killed their 16-year-old family member, you go right ahead. Once again, we live in a world where black people are slain, especially for no reason, to where blacks slaying blacks does not make it any better. Black on black crime, no crime against people at all is okay, especially towards people that are often ignored, which is black people. So once again, if you can say free C Murder in front of the people who lost a loved one who was only 16 years old and was a fan of this man, not only did they beat him before C Murder consciously killed him, then you go right ahead and be on that bandwagon. So I never understood when Monica tried to get Kim Kardashian and other people in to try to get C Murder out of jail, because he is very deserving. You killed a 16-year-old black boy. As a black man, you should eternally be ashamed of yourself, and you should also have content in prison knowing that you are paying for something that you did that was wrong.